I'm live. I'm reading Vacant Vacation. It's a travel book, a journey in 1946 with Joan and her then husband Charles Beatty. It was published in 1947, and Joan Marshall Grant was a writer of her own far memories. Wonderful books she wrote, 7 of them. But this one is a travel account, and we are here in chapter 20. Is it 24? Let me just see. 223. No, Joan and the Dragon. I think it's 26. I'll check that later. It's Roman numbers. I can never read them. Joan and the Dragon. Never underrate the value of being considered thoroughly inefficient, was the advice given to me by an old lady who had been a toast of the Victorians. But I had not the wit to benefit by her experience, and remained faithfully in my fashion to the dictum of my Yorkshire nanny. I always say, if you want a thing done properly, do it yourself. So with a firm conviction that I was being a devoted valet to my fortunate spouse, I suggested that Charles should collect the car while I finished the packing, thus avoiding the necessity of rescuing my 2 new blouses from the damp embrace of his sponge. I rang for the porter, told him to take the 5 suitcases, 1 attaché case, 1 canvas crib, 4 assorted coats, 1 basket now containing sweets to take back to England, and Charles' spare hat, and went down to change our few remaining Swiss francs into French. I had every intention of being quick, as Charles dislikes delay at the start of a journey, and had made up his mind to leave by 10, so that we could lunch in Annecy. At the desk, a large, determined woman was paying her bill. I had already seen and disliked her while waiting for the lift the previous day. Then she had been berating her poor little husband, who peered through his pince-nez glasses with the anxiety of an unskilled matador in the path of a bull. He was in disgrace, for in spite of an advance booking, they had been given a room which not only failed to have a view of Mont Blanc, but was without a private bath. Cringing with embarrassment, he let the tirade wash over him. "There is a bathroom next door," he protested, but with bitter sarcasm she asked whether he was ignorant of the dangers of communal baths. Stop it, Joy. You admit that you specifically demanded a bathroom and a view of the lake. Well, don't let yourself be bullied by foreigners. Don't stand there gaping. Do something. The lift arrived, and during the descent she ordered him to search Geneva until he found more suitable accommodation. Fortunately, he decided to go with him, implying that she must protect herself from his incompetence. I watched him go out into the hot sunshine with a certain pleasure. Her shoes looked uncomfortably tight, and I had been told that all the other hotels which had the stars she considered vital were booked up for at least a week. So they had spent the night at the Beau Rivage, and it was clear that beneath his smiling courtesy my friend, the receptionist, was not sorry they were going. Without bothering to discover that he spoke her language, she proceeded to shout at him in execrable French, being under the familiar delusion that all foreigners are stone deaf. The theme of her remarks was that her husband had lost their sweet coupons, and she must immediately be given some more. Abjectly, her husband repeated in a whisper, "But my dear, I never had any sweet coupons." But she brushed this aside with a contemptuous snort. "Go on," said Petrol, "and see if I can't make her feel small." I told him to be quiet, explained that I was in a hurry, that Charles was probably already waiting in the car. "Bah," said Petrol, changed your views very suddenly, haven't you? Mincing about, saying primly, "Of course, it's none of my business." Double bar. I found myself winking at the receptionist, and then saying to her, in my most disarming voice, "Perhaps I could help by translating for you. Swiss French is sometimes so difficult, isn't it?" The woman turned on me a smile, furnished with teeth white and gleaming as a bidet, and probably made of the same material. "How kind," she purred. "Foreigners are so stupid." "But aren't we all?" She took this, as I intended, to include all males and most females. Confident that she could not understand, I remarked to the receptionist that if he would sustain the pretense of not speaking English, we might enjoy ourselves at her expense. Then I turned to her and explained that it was impossible for her husband to have lost the sweet coupons, as no such things existed, the only tickets required being for bread, biscuits, and drinks containing milk or cream. He was so pleased at this unexpected victory that I thought he might suddenly skip up and down or clap his hands like a delighted child. But convinced that in me she had an ally, she began to recount the agony suffered through not having a bathroom. By the resignation on her husband's face, I knew that this saga had already eaten deep into a groove of one of the records in her album of complaints. I gave her lavish sympathy for a gastric complaint from which I presumed she suffered, and which made the close proximity of a plug so vital. I advised an immediate visit to a doctor, or perhaps a course of medicinal baths, to set her free from this galling restriction which made it necessary for her to travel in the narrow rut of the tourist. I talked too fast for her to intercept, pretending to take it for granted that she was only too well aware that her holiday had been pathetically circumscribed by her inflictions. Of course, and she must know this as well as I did, one must choose between plumbing and beautiful meals, for both so seldom existed under the same roof. Either one was herded among vulgar sightseers, or else discovered romantic retreats where the atmosphere of each country could be absorbed by the cultured traveller. She began to wilt and nervously fingered the diamond clips which blazed on the labels of her suit. I could almost hear her thinking, "Have I perhaps missed something? Is this the way I ought to have planned my trip, so as to impress my acquaintances over the bridge table when I get home? Perhaps I could have given a little talk at the club. So interesting, you know, we were right in the wilds." Lavishly I embroidered my theme, a glimpse of the patio of a fazenda in a Brazilian forest 400 miles from a railway line, with Negroes singing under poinsettia trees, jostled for precedence, with a histrionic glimpse of myself as the honored guest of a Sikh. Sheikh in the Iraqi desert, a ruined palace in Egypt, where I had slept in a queen's bedplace, stared at by a gigantic lizard, flashed across the screen which had just shown forgotten inns of the High Tyrol and bouillabaisse in the Vieux Port of Marseille. She looked at me with new respect, then patted. She looked at me with new respect, patted her husband. "Don't worry if there's no room booked for us tonight. We will explore." She gave him a look that was almost roguish. "We have been getting too set in our ways. After all, we can bathe when we get home." With a desperate effort to compete, she said to me, "We have 4 bathrooms." "The restrictions will soon be relaxed," I said consolingly, "and then you will be able to get the others put in." adding with hideous brightness, "We must all be brave and rough it a little longer." Over her massive shoulder her husband beamed at me, like an Ior who has at last been given a beautiful pink balloon. Right, the next chapter is Cultured Customs, and I hope you have a good Tuesday, the 7th of January.